A very fresh morning. Good morning, students. We are moving towards another group of plants, which are actually another beautiful plants. They are the pteridophytes, and they are very special. Why they are so special? Because they are first terrestrial plants. They are the first terrestrial plants who have vascular tissue. Before I just start with my today's lecture, this week I will take test from your another group from biological classification, that is protista, right? Every single line of ncrt, as you I think from my monra test, you know that any single line I can ask you in the protista, right? Or if you have watched my lectures, so you will be very comfortable in attempting that test. So be prepared for that test on Saturday or Sunday. So there is another group from our plant kingdom we will discuss today, that is the pteridophytes. As I told you that they are the first terrestrial plants, because when we talked about bryophytes, what did we say? They are the amphibians of plant kingdoms. But pteridophytes, they are known as the reptiles of plants kingdom. They are the first type of plants which can grow more time on the soil, right? They are the terrestrial plants, and if they are terrestrial, it means the vascular tissues, xylem and phloem, they are developed in these pteridophytes. We are moving now from primitive to advanced group of plants. We have to reach till the most advanced group. And you know what is the most advanced group? That is the angiosperms. They are the flowering plants, most developed plants, we say. And we are on our group after bryophytes, that is the pteridophytes. They are non-flowering plants. Non-flowering plants, you know that reproduction is not by seed, not by fruit formation. It is again reproduction is by spore formation. I think this concept is clear in your mind now, that in bryophytes, in pteridophytes, we are talking about the spore formation. We are not talking about seed everywhere, right? Anywhere we did not talk about seed. We are only talk about the spore formation in the bryophytes also, as well as in pteridophytes. Where will you find them? Normally, actually, they grow in moist places, but they are found in sandy soil also. The reason to grow in moist places is the same. They need water for the fertilization. That is why if you look them, their gametophyte body, their prothallus body is flat, and it rests on the surface of you can say soil and remain in contact with the water. It is flat, so it directly has a contact with the water. Pteridophytes, they also known as reptiles of plant kingdom, because in animals, reptiles were the first one which were actually true land animals, and same thing goes for your pteridophytes. They are able to survive out from the water most of the time. So that is why they are the first true land plants, first true terrestrial plants. If this question comes in your exam without any confusion, it is the pteridophytes. Please don't mark bryophytes. Bryophytes को amphibians बोलते हैं. Pteridophytes, they are the reptiles of plant kingdom. Okay, mark these kinds of things differently in your notebook, so that at least at the time of revision you can put stress on them. Okay, if we talk about alternation of generation, those who are listening to me for very first time or watching my video, my lecture for first time, in my last lecture I discussed about alternation of generation. Means here we are going to talk about gametophytic and sporophytic stage, right? So here again, here is the sporophytic stage actually, which give rise to gametophytic stage, and from gametophyte then it can change into sporophyte. So that is the vice versa. So the dominant stage here in the pteridophyte is sporophyte. So आपका एक डिफरेंट का क्वेश्चन रेडी हो रहा है यहाँ पे, that if you are asked to differentiate between bryophytes and pteridophytes, you can easily write down first point that dominant phase in bryophyte was gametophyte, the dominant phase in pteridophyte is sporophyte. Sporophyte is actually spore producing phase. This is the spore producing stage, so it is a diploid stage. And now स्पोर कहाँ मिलेंगे? यहाँ तो अभी तक तो हमने बोला था कि जो हमारा ब्रायोफाइट्स है उसमें तो कैप्सूल में हमें स्पोर्स मिल रहे थे. नाउ हियर स्पोर्स दे कैन बी प्रोड्यूस्ड ऑन लीव्स, and these leaves they modified into a structure which is known as sporangia, and these sporangia they or these spore bearing leaves, those leaves which are having spores, they are known as, they modified into sporangia and they are known as sporophylls. Now fill word तो हमेशा में leaves के लिए use करते हैं हम. So sporophylls means they can be of two types, means they are the spore producing leaves. We are talking about the leaves, but they are so special that they produce spores. Now they are of two types. If they are tiny, so they will be known as microsporophylls. If they are large or the bigger one, they will be known as macro. I will write here. That is the macrophylls, or you can write them. They are the macrosporophylls, right? And examples which are very, very important. Example for sporophyll is microsporophyll is Selaginella. An example for big leaves is ferns. I will show you that how ferns look like. As you can see, this is very common plant in houses. That is the fern. This is having your bigger leaves. And what about your Selaginella? It is having tiny leaves, spores. We are talking about spore bearing leaves basically, right? Now if the leaves, ये तो normal leaves, they are modified into sporangia or sporophyll. If the leaves they are very compactly arranged like this, very compactly arranged, very tightly, they appear like a cone like structure, and this is known as, this cone like structure को हम क्या बोलते हैं? Strobilus. This cone like structure is known as strobilus. So Selaginella is having tiny leaves, and these tiny leaves they are compactly arranged, then they form a cone like structure. That is the reason. कई बार पूछते हैं मैम, children they ask me, मैम Selaginella आपने स्ट्रॉबिलस में भी लिखा है और माइक्रोस्पोरोफिल्स में भी लिखा है. एक्चुअली माइक्रोस्पोरोफिल्स, टाइनी लीव्स, when they are compactly arranged, they look like a cone. That is why Selaginella, it is an example of your tiny leaves, and well as we have written them in the cone, right? And the another example is Equisetum. This question, these both examples, they are very, very important. And large leaves may ferns, though I don't think anybody is going to forget about that, because it is very simple. Ferns, they are usually, you find these ferns, these are the pteridophytes. You find them easily at the homes, right? Decoration के लिए बहुत use होते हैं ये. If we come to now gametophytic part, यहाँ पे why we are not much concentrating on gametophytic. Actually gametophytic एक तो inconspicuous है. If you remember, conspicuous word हम use करते हैं जो कि visible हो, large होती है जो चीज़. But gametophytic क्या है? Inconspicuous, means it is not very clearly visible, and it means it is very small, green thallus like body, and it is haploid. And gametophytic, how does it look like? Because it is green, so it is photosynthetic. And here we are not calling it as a thallus, we are calling it as a prothallus. It is very, very small, not highly developed, but it has male and female sex organs. That means antheridia and archegonia, and which further give rise to your male gamete and female gamete. That is the main thing about this gametophyte. यहाँ पे sporophyte जो है that produce the spores, और gametophyte produce the your gametes, right? Male and female gametes. So अगर हम quick there is a quick recap देखें life cycle कैसा है. Body is predominantly, main body type is sporophyte, right? It undergoes, because it is spores, these sporangia bear spores, they undergo meiosis, they will produce spores. Spores will germinate and they will form haploid prothallus, which is gametophyte. Now this will produce male gamete as well as female gamete. Now these gametes, they will fuse to form a diploid body, which is known as zygote, and it will change into sporophyte. Now you will ask, ma'am, what is the difference from bryophyte then? First difference, the predominant stage is sporophyte, right? If you recall your bryophyte, sporophyte is bachcha totally independent. Here we are not talking about that it is dependent on the bryophyte. It grows on prothallus, it grows from prothallus, but very soon it all grow very, very independently, right? And it is truly differentiated into root, stem and leaves. So where do you find spores in the pteridophyte? In the sporangia, which in sporangia, spore mother cells, they undergo meiosis and they produce spores, which will germinate and produce your prothallus body, which you call as gametophyte, which is your haploid. Now, where does prothallus grow? It grows on cool, damp and shady place, because the reason is same, they need water for the fertilization. Male gamete has to swim to the female gamete. One more point that यहाँ पे बच्चे गलती करते हैं कि अगर डोमिनेंट फेस स्पोरोफाइट है, बच्चा स्पोरोफाइट, एस फॉर स्पोरोफाइट अगर याद ऐसे रखना है तो ऐसे रख लो, दैट्स एस फॉर स्पोरोफाइट, एस फॉर स्पोर्स. मेल सेक्स और फीमेल सेक्स ऑर्गन स्पोर्स से डेवलप नहीं करवा के आना है. स्पोर्स से जर्मिनेट होके गैमीटोफाइट बनता है, और गैमीटोफाइट जो आपका प्रोथैलस है, it has multicellular and covered antheridia and archegonia, which is your produce your antherozoids or egg cell. Antherozoid male gamete होता है, eggs is female gamete. Antherozoid has to swim to the egg cell, they fuse, they form zygote, and well differentiated sporophyte is formed, right? So in majority of pteridophytes, usually all the spores, they are of same kind, no problem at all, that is homosporous. But Selaginella and Salvia, Selaginella और कहाँ किया है हमने, that is your Selaginella we have already discussed in your tiny leaves with the microsporophylls as well as the cone. So in Selaginella, that is the in Selaginella and Salvinia, they produce two different kinds of spores, mega and माइक्रो. अब आप बोलोगे मैम इनका क्या फ़ायदा है. मेगा लार्ज स्पोर्स दे गिव राइज टू फीमेल गैमीटोफाइट, एंड microspores they give rise to male gametophyte. This is the Selaginella, right? And this is the Salvinia, which is growing in water. As you can see their body, it is totally on the flat surface, directly in contact with the surface of water, right? So Selaginella and Salvinia को भूलना नहीं है, ये दोनों टेरिडोफाइट्स हैं और इनको क्यों हमने डिस्कस किया है? Because they are heterosporous. They can produce two different kinds of spores. कौन-कौन से? Mega and micro. Mega give rise to female gametophyte and micro give rise to male gametophyte. One last thing I will take with you. If you have to write down the difference between, let me change the pen so that you should be comfortable in watching this, bryophyte and pteridophyte, right? अगर आपको difference लिखना हो, then what will be the first difference? Now I think you don't need to cram all these things. Dominant phase, if we talk about here, I think my all children, they are very confident in this. That is the gametophytic stage or gametophyte. What about here? Dominant phase is sporophyte, which is the diploid one. The main plant body is thallus-like. Main plant body. How does it look like? It is thallus-like. What about sporophyte? Main plant body means your sporophyte, right, is having, or you can say differentiated into true roots, stem and leaves, right? That is the second difference. Third, they lack, what do they lack? They lack vascular tissue, right? They have vascular tissues, which is your xylem and phloem, right? One major more difference, sporophyte. What was the foot seta capsule? Sporophyte is dependent on gametophyte. But what about the pteridophyte? No. Both, if we write both gametophyte and sporophyte, they are independent, right? Both gametophyte and sporophyte, they are independent stages, are independent plant bodies. I think there should not be any confusion regarding this, right? So you are clear with the picture that what are the examples? Selaginella, ferns, Salvinia, Equisetum. These are the examples of your pteridophytes, right? What about the bryophytes? What was the example of the bryophytes we discussed? Because mainly we always get confused with the examples. Marcantia, then Rixia, then Funaria. These were the bryophytes. So go through this lecture very carefully. You will be definitely able to solve many questions.